Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com. This is the NoDQ Top 5 series. In this video, I will be discussing my top favorite tag teams of the golden era of WWE. Let's go ahead and get started with the number 5 tag team, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid. Arguably, they were the most athletic tag team of the 1980s. British Bulldog had the power, Dynamite Kid had the speed and agility. Dynamite Kid was one of the greatest in-ring performers of his era, and the team together, they were a hot act in WWE during the mid-1980s. Their biggest win came at WrestleMania 2 when they defeated the Dream Team to capture the tag team titles. They ended up losing the titles to the Hart Foundation in controversial fashion, of course, due to the shady referee tactics from one Danny Davis. You had the British Bulldogs continuing to make their mark in WWE throughout 1987 and 1988. And then, unfortunately, their run came to an end. Dynamite Kid ended up retiring from wrestling just a few years later, and the British Bulldog would return to WWE in 1990 as a singles competitor. Next up at number 4 is the Legion of Doom, known in other places as the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors were arguably the biggest tag team of the 1980s in various promotions, including the NWA/WCW and the AWA. They came to WWE in 1990, and they immediately made an impact when they helped the Hart Foundation secure the tag team championships at SummerSlam 90 against Demolition. And then a year later at SummerSlam 91, LOD would finally capture the tag team championships from the Nasty Boys and would have their run. In 1992, LOD took a short hiatus in the early part of the year and then returned at WrestleMania 8 with their old manager from the NWA, one precious Paul Ellering. And then, of course, the match at SummerSlam 92 where you had LOD facing Money Incorporated and Paul Ellering brought out the dummy known as Rocco. You had LOD coming out there with their bikes. After that, they disappeared from the company. But during the golden era, LOD definitely made their mark in WWE, even though they were only part of the company for a few years. LOD, they sold tons of merchandise. They have the wrestling buddies that you see behind me, and they were major superstars in WWE for sure. Coming in at number 3, the Rockers, or as Gorilla Monsoon put it, the Tag Team Specialists. The Rockers got their start in the AWA and then headed to WWE in 1988. The team quickly rose up the ranks in the company, and they were putting on some great performances during an era of big men having slower paced matches. The Rockers, when they were in there, it was fast and furious. The action was intense. They would throw their double drop kicks. They would do all these different double team maneuvers. They would run to the ring. They just had that high energy that was a contrast to what you saw for the most part in the upper card of WWE for that time. The Rockers would have some great feuds with teams like the Brain Busters, the Hart Foundation, and the list goes on. In 1991, they started having some issues, and that eventually led to Shawn Michaels turning heel on Marty Jannetty during the barbershop segment in January of 92. But no doubt, the Rockers helped get Shawn Michaels' career on track in WWE and set the tone for what was to come from the Heartbreak Kid persona in the mid-90s. And now for the number 2 tag team for the WWE Golden Era, a team that I feel personally is very under-repped in WWE history. The only time they were really acknowledged since they left was when New Day broke the tag team title record that they had set in the late 80s. I'm talking about Demolition. Originally, Axe and Smash. Actually, it was Axe and a different wrestler, and then Smash came in shortly thereafter. But for the most part, for the majority of their run as a tag team, it was Axe, Bill Eadie and Smash Barry Darsow as Demolition, and they started off as heels in WWE in early 1987, and they got some criticism. Some people were considering them to be a knockoff of the Legion of Doom, and yeah, WWE was trying to capitalize on the success of the Road Warriors, so they came up with their own team that would be dominant like the Road Warriors. And Demolition, they had their own moveset, they had their own tag team moves that they did together, they had their own look, and they had Mr. Fuji as their manager. The trio, in my opinion, worked really well together. Demolition also had a badass entrance theme song, one of the first really great theme songs, in my opinion, during that era where all the talents were starting to have their own ring entrance music. Demolition would go on to defeat Strikeforce for the tag team titles at WrestleMania 4, and would go on to hold the titles for quite some time, over a year. At Survivor Series 1988, there was a double turn where the Powers of Pain turned heel and joined up with Mr. Fuji. Mr. Fuji had abandoned the Demolition tag team in favor of the Powers of Pain, and Demolition became babyfaces. That led to a match at WrestleMania, which Demolition won, but then they lost the tag team titles, won them back, and then lost them again to Andre the Giant and Haku, the Colossal Connection. This led to WrestleMania 6, where Demolition beat Andre and Haku to regain the titles. And then we saw a change with Demolition. A third member came into the mix by the name of Crush, aka Brian Adams. Now, Bill Eadie, aka Axe, was reportedly dealing with some health issues at the time, and that's why they brought in Crush. Now, naturally, when you add a third person to the mix, that creates an unfair advantage. So Demolition went back to being heels, and eventually they would have Mr. Fuji with them again. At SummerSlam 1990, Demolition faced the Hart Foundation 2 out of 3 falls match, and thanks to the help of, interestingly enough, the team that Demolition were accused of copying, Legion of Doom, coming out there to save the day, we had the Hart Foundation win the titles. A few months later, Bill Eadie, aka Axe, left the company, and it was just Crush and Smash. This was the beginning of the end for Demolition, and then we had them change their music, which I thought was such a big mistake, but obviously WWE had given up on the team. Sadly enough, when LOD came in, it felt like WWE pretty much gave up on Demolition, and they were never really mentioned again after they finally broke up as a team. But I feel like they were one of the all-time great tag teams in WWE history and deserve the recognition. And now for my number one tag team of the golden era for WWE, Hart Foundation. Bret the Hitman Hart with Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And at first, they had the manager, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Bret Hart came into WWE and Jim Neidhart was off on his own. The two of them were paired together. Jimmy Hart became their manager, and the rest, as they say, was history. The Hart Foundation rose in the ranks in WWE, and they really were a perfect tag team because Bret Hart was the technician, Jim Neidhart was the powerhouse. Bret Hart was more cool, calm, and collected, while Jim Neidhart was the madman. So they really played each other off well with their different personas and in-ring styles. The Hart Foundation, with the help of crooked referee Danny Davis, ended up defeating the British Bulldogs to capture the tag team titles in early 1987. Hart Foundation would have a lengthy reign with the tag team titles until Strikeforce would defeat them for the titles in the later part of 1987. After WrestleMania 4, we started to see a change with the Hart Foundation. Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart broke away from Jimmy Hart, went off on their own. Jimmy Hart wasn't a fan of it, and Jimmy Hart helped screw over the Hart Foundation at SummerSlam 88. Hart Foundation would have to wait a while to regain those tag team titles, but they kept being a focal point in the tag team division. And then finally, at SummerSlam 90, Hart Foundation defeated Demolition to regain the tag team titles. They feuded with various teams, but ultimately lost the tag team titles to the Nasty Boys at WrestleMania 7. And then Hart Foundation broke up Bret Hart went off on his own. Jim Neidhart formed a tag team with Owen Hart, and then later Owen Hart teamed with Koko Beware. But yeah, Hart Foundation, no doubt, they were probably the greatest tag team of that era, and in my opinion, the top one of the golden era for sure. Hart Foundation, no doubt, left a huge mark in the world of WWE sports entertainment. All right, that will wrap it up for my top 5 tag teams of the WWE golden era. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please give that subscription button the doomsday device or any other maneuver. Just click that subscribe button, tell a friend, and stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest wrestling news and rumors.